Hi, my name is Danny. I am an engineer here at Seven Factor. I've been here about a year, and this is the Wheel of Misfortune. So the way this came about is a friend of my dad actually runs a CrossFit down here south of Atlanta. And what they wanted in COVID, and obviously this is coming in a bit late now, but in COVID, they all couldn't get together and they all had kind of home gyms and stuff they were doing at their own, or they would show up CrossFit independently. And they wanted workouts for themselves. They wanted like a randomized workout that they could just spin up whenever they wanted. So they came to me and they asked me to make this app where you could just spin. The Wheel of Misfortune was actually their idea. They wanted to be able to just spin and get different workouts, movements they call them in CrossFit. So they wanted to be able to just have a bunch of different movements randomly generated for them and then have that put together into a workout. So that's what I made. So essentially, to run through this app really quickly, its functionality, you just click Let's Spin and it will go through all the different movements. So what I wanted to add was I wanted you to be able to sign in and customize your movements. So once you sign into the account, it will load all the different movements here, and these come in by default. This was a list that they gave me by default. So you can click on them and you can edit them however you want. You can delete them. You can also add movements if you want. So I can add a new one. And then I just added kind of a default list of images, that stock images that I got here. And you can choose whatever you want and just create movements. And then once you add them there, obviously they will appear on the wheel. So I wrote this app in React Native, which I had never used before. So I used something called Expo. Expo is kind of like a framework for apps, and it does all the heavy lifting for you. So it will build it into Android, it will build it into iOS. It also makes it easy to run. Like right now, I'm obviously running this on an iOS emulator on my Mac. I can also send it over to my phone and run it in real time on my phone. I can debug from my phone. So there are some limitations to Expo. Not every library, not every package, I should say, works with Expo, but I think it does so much heavy lifting for you that, especially for someone doing an app for the first time like me, it was a huge benefit. So originally, so you can see down here, this is actually like a carousel sort of thing. So if I spin again, it'll add it to a carousel at the bottom. Originally, I had the wheel as a spinning carousel like this, and it would fly through them. But the problem with that was all the packages that I was using for carousel were having problems going fast enough. Like they had auto spin where they would automatically go through, but the way it wasn't caching the images. It was just kind of loading them all dynamically, like on the spot, which was taking too long for it to quickly fly through them the way I wanted it to for a random looking wheel. So I ended up just doing something very basic, which is I just have this one image right here and I just swap it out with different images. And all these images are cached, or they should be cached as part of the app here. So that was probably the biggest problem that I had. A couple other issues that I had was actually publishing to the App Store. So the App Store, the Apple App Store, I should say, is very strict on what they want. So one of the things that I ran into was if you're creating accounts through an app on the App Store, you have to be able to delete those accounts. Otherwise, the app will not be approved. So I had to add this delete account. Obviously, this is very simple. I should say I'm using Firebase for this. So all the authentication, all the storage is in Firebase, which is free up to a certain point, which I don't think this app is ever going to get big enough to pass the free limits. But so that was one issue I ran into. So another thing that was an issue was apparently, and when I started, I didn't know that when you make an app, you have to have a privacy policy and you have to have a website that the users can go and can submit complaints if they want to. So you have to have an active email for your company, so to speak, or just your app, and you have to have a website with your privacy policy listed on it. So I had to create that. So that was annoying. I created that in WordPress. But that was something that I didn't know you had to have either. And then the last thing was, sometimes with Expo, I ran into a problem where what was showing on the emulator and what shows on an actual phone are different. So the last update I made to the app was just fixing some screen resolution issues. So with different iPhones, of course, different things show up differently. And on older iPhones where the button still existed down here, there was some overlap with some of the elements. So I made the fix, but I did it all in the emulator. And then when I pushed it to the App Store, they said that the app was crashing when it first loaded. So I loaded up on the emulator again and it was fine. And I loaded it on my actual phone and I realized it was crashing. So the emulator is not 100% accurate, which I should have known ahead of time, but I didn't really think about it. I kind of took it for granted. So that was another thing, is you got to load it on an actual phone just to make sure what you're doing is accurate. So those were some of the issues that I ran into, but overall, I think Expo is an excellent tool. It's a great for especially first-time developers. I think overall it was a good experience. Well, what I learned was, I learned everything revolving around how to make an app. I learned a lot about the App Store. I learned a lot about the process. And this is on the Google Play Store as well. The Google Play Store is way more lenient. I never had a rejection from the Play Store, only from the Apple Store. So I just learned a whole lot about JavaScript, about how to create apps, how to work in React. I had actually never done React before. So it's good to do projects on the side because you learn things that you might not have an opportunity to learn while you're working. But actually, I think this is going to be helpful because one of my upcoming projects for 7-Factor is written in React. So this is going to be a huge head start into that. So I think it was a great experience and something that everyone should do. I would definitely recommend working in React. So that's the Wheel of Misfortune. You can find it in either the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Just search for the Wheel of Misfortune. Actually, I think it's listed as CrossFit Wheel of Misfortune because that name was already taken. But yeah, that was it. I'm Danny again. Thank you.